In today's video, I'm going to show you how I transformed this cabinet from this into this. But first, here's some exciting news. Before I get started today, I want to let you guys know about a brand new coaching group that myself and Kerry Rose, the decorative painter, have set up. So this group has been created for creatives. It's called the Creative Corner, and it's a welcoming community where you can grow not only your painting skills, but also your business skills, your social media skills. There are 2 live paint tutorials every month, as well as monthly social catch-ups. When I first started out as a painter, I didn't have a clue. I didn't know anything. Like, just clueless. I was clueless when it came to art, when it came to social media. I was okay with the business side of things because I had a history of that in my work, but the rest of it, marketing, all of that, I was like, where am I? What am I doing here? So the idea of this group is no matter what level you're at, it's a group for everybody. And as I say, a community where we can all just pitch in and help each other out. If you want more details, it's down in the description below. Right, so I have this very old, it's not old, it's old because it looks old, but not in a good way. I've got this veneered piece here. It looks like it might have come from a shop like Argos or something from the 90s. It's nothing special, it's just, but it is very, very slippy. So the first thing I'm going to do today, I'm going to use something called Bonding Boss. So this is a great product by Dixie Belle because it combines 2 kinds of primers. You've got a bleed through primer and also an adhesive primer in one. And because I'm going to be using dark colours today, I'm going to use it in clear, and I'm just going to put 1 coat of this onto that. Bonding Boss is an all-in-one primer that can be used for both slick surfaces and also bleed through. It can even be used on glass. My next colour is Mason Dixon Grey, and I have a premium chip brush by Dixie Belle. Any chip brush with natural bristles will do fine. And I'm going to stipple this, which basically means I'm just going to like dab it. I'm just going to give it a really good dab. Dabbing, or its other name stippling, is a really, really good technique for creating texture and age. So as I dab, I am putting my brush in different directions and I'm going over the top of paint that I've already dabbed on. And what this will do will create a stone-like texture. The natural bristles of my brush, because they're really scratchy, will also help create that very textured finish that I'm looking for here, because it just looks more vintage, and to me it just looks so much more interesting. My next product is going to be some decoupage paper by Dixie Belle. It's a new one called Moody Moms, and it's got this lovely red tone to it, and I'm going to be putting it on these panels here. So I will be doing more stuff to the grey, so it's not just going to be like grey and these like red tones, but I'm going to put this on next and then work around it just to show you the kind of, I'm going to rip it as I get it out, just to show you the kind of size. So they're quite big, so I'm not going to need to use all of this. So I am going to do a little bit of chopping as well. So I'm going to use Satin Clear Coat as glue. This is kind of going to be what I'm going to stick my paper down with. And I'm going to apply it here to start with, just a nice coat of it. Like this. Next, I'm going to grab my paper. I'm going to decide which way I want it, and I think I want it this way, like this, like this. And then I'm just going to smooth it down like this, making sure that I press into all of the edges, and then I'm going to apply more clear coat over the top. The clear coat will dry clear. The blue tinge that you're seeing here won't be seen as soon as it dries. Once I had applied it, it's good to do this while it's wet. I grabbed some 120 grit sandpaper and just began to sand around those edges. I like the rustic look, so I don't mind it looking a bit distressed and a bit uneven, because I think it just contributes to that very worn vintage look that I love. However, if you're more of a perfectionist than I am, then you can always measure out the cut before you go ahead and apply the paper and cut it out and then apply it, rather than sanding around those edges this way. I did the exact same thing and followed the same process for each of the panels on this cabinet. Now it's actually time to get some colour on this piece and properly start painting it. So the first colour that I started with was Muscadine Wine. Again, I used the Stippling dabby motion and a natural bristled brush. At first, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with this, other than I knew that I wanted this kind of colour on it and I wanted some dark and light elements, but I wasn't sure where I wanted those dark and light elements. So I began by applying the Muscadine Wine in the middle of the piece and just had started having a play, really. Don't go in too heavy-handed with paint either. It's so much easier to start off small and then build up. So my next colour is Rustic Red. It's very similar to Muscadine Wine, but it's got less brown in it. It's a little bit more of a vivid red. And I started blending this into the Muscadine Wine, again using a natural bristled brush and using dabbing motions. I am working in sections and taking the process of this quite slowly until I really decide and know what I want to do. All in my mind I'm thinking at the moment is, let's just get two different variations of red on there. The Muscadine Wine is a bit deeper and the Rustic Red a bit brighter. I then decide to bring in some Apricot, which is a very light peachy colour. Again, with another natural chip brush, I just start dabbing that on. And here I have a big brush called the Best Dang brush. It's amazing to achieve smoky blends, and I call this my neutral brush, so I'm not putting any paint on this at all. All I'm doing is dabbing that brush with the paint that's already on the furniture to create some smoky texture and to create a smoky blend. Sometimes I do get a little bit of paint on the decoupage paper. Again, I'm kind of fine with that, because again, it just adds to that worn, faded look. So when I do get a little bit of paint on there, I'm just wiping it off with a damp rag. I decided I wanted more of the apricot colour up at the top, as you can see there. So I knew by this point that I wanted a look that was going to be lighter at the top and a little bit darker and grungier at the bottom. So I start working more of the reds, the Muscadine Wine and the Rustic Red in the other side of the piece, and then start working more of the apricot at the top. I'm mapping out my colours basically before grabbing my Best Dang brush and stippling it in. And don't you just love that really soft, elegant, smoky texture that it creates? I like to build up, as I said before, I like to build up slowly and then add more colour in as I go along. You do have plenty of time to work the paint, especially if you have a water mister. So at the bottom here, I'm using a colour called Caviar, and I'm doing the exact same thing as I did with the apricot, but just with a darker colour. I then use a little bit of Caviar on a French tip brush. This means it's got like a really pointy tip. Put a tiny little bit of the Caviar on my brush and begin dry brushing. So this just means that I get this very soft paint effect. I focus it mostly around the edges, and that is just to bring out some of the corners and to give this piece more depth. Next, I used a soft brown called Pine Cone and dry brushed a little bit of that on, and that is just again to create age and to highlight some areas. I used to go to museums with my granddad as a teenager every Sunday almost, in old country English homes, and this really inspired these looks for me. But if you're ever unsure about how to create an age piece or even where to start, then just get an inspiration photo that you can kind of follow. Just have a look at the photo and see where the sun might have bleached certain places and darkened others, or where dirt and grubbiness might have happened, and just try and then focus that onto a piece of furniture that you're painting. So for all of the interior of this piece, I mixed a little bit of Pine Cone with Apricot and just began to dab, and this wasn't painless. The interior is never easy to paint, but sometimes it's so worth it on some pieces. Then I grabbed some bronze gilding wax and very roughly just put a little bit of this over around some of the edges as well. This is just to add a little bit of extra glam to the piece. Lastly, it's time to wax this piece. So I started with some clear wax, and that is not only to seal it, but it's also to act as a foundation for decorative waxes over the top. It means it makes it easier to blend in waxes, darker waxes over the top and smooth them out. I then applied dark wax all around the edges, focusing mainly on the bottom of the piece where it's probably gotten a little bit dirtier and been a little bit more exposed. Just like with the paint, I like to build the wax up gradually, but also if you go in there a little bit too heavy-handed with the dark wax and you've already applied your clear, all you have to do is grab your clear wax brush and just smooth that out and it will remove some of the dark wax. So that's why you should always put the clear wax on first. And here is the finished look. This is one of my favourite styles to complete. It reminds me of going around old English manor homes with my granddad when I was a teenager, and it also inspires the history nerd in me as well. But let me know what you think in the comments, and always happy creating and have an awesome day. Goodbye.